parameter types. We were talking about the topic parameter types. Okay, so in that we had discussed about default, not default, sorry. We had discussed about positional parameters and then keyed parameters, and we need to discuss about default and variable length arguments. So let's check on these two scenarios and then we jump to the next topic. So what is default argument? Positional we had already discussed. By default, whatever parameters we use in a function are positional parameters. And the important thing is order is very important for positional parameters. That's what we had discussed. So second thing, we have even we had discussed examples for all of this with for positional, for keyed parameters, everything. Next thing we had discussed about is keyed parameters. You can see here. So the purpose of keyed parameters is so if you here we don't need to follow order, and we can use the name of parameter as a key, so that even if you exchange order or if you change the order of passing values, still the values are passed to the expected destination. So to whichever the order you want to follow, it follows that order, even though we interchange the order of passing. So this is the advantage with the keyed parameters. We had discussed this already. Maybe if anyone missed it, please go through previous recording. That gives you a very clear picture. And after that, default parameters. We use all these types of parameters, friends, not just positional, not just the keyed or default. So we use all these types. Now, what is default parameters? Let's talk about it. Default means simple, friends. So here, suppose let us do one thing. I can assign a value in the beginning itself. Suppose you can see here, while declaring variable itself, we can set value. Something like, suppose you say, I put male or female, anything is fine, friends. So we have assigned a value, but there maybe we are having error because again we should follow a rule. So this assignment usually it has to come from right to left. So means what? Not from left to right. Maybe you can put this gender here and then remove comma. So this works. See here. So this is default assignment. Suppose if you don't pass any value for gender, then it by default interpreter picks this default value which you are assigning to this variable. Right? By default, suppose if you say gender, you set it to something like male or female. Maybe you can set it to female or maybe you can set to male. Anything is fine, friends. So that some default value. Age we cannot predict how much we should assign. Okay. Maybe by default we can set it to 0. Maybe later on we can override that value. Even name also, something like that. So there are times where we use default values to set with some defaults. Maybe if we want, we can override that. That is the idea, friends. Okay. So what is default? Simply speaking, so default parameters means nothing but a parameter which is assigned with some value while declaring itself. Such parameters are called default parameters. Now this is the example of default parameter. Now you can see this time on if you remember on in last class. Okay. So let's sorry, let's comment this test case 2, test case 3. So in the last class, maybe yesterday's class, yeah, maybe if it is yesterday, in the yesterday's class, if you remember, what did we do? We have, if you try to just pass name and age, we got error. Why we have error? Because even we are forced to pass gender as well when in the yesterday's session. right? Or in the previous session. But this time, even if you just pass name and age, it will work. You don't need to pass gender. Maybe you can ask why. If you pass gender, nothing happens. If you want, you can do one thing. You can just simply say, suppose you can change gender if you want. So instead of John, if you pass something like Mary, okay, and if you can want to pass something like uh, gender as female, yes, still it is fine. You can see now. So what happens now when I run this? This male is replaced with female. You got it right. Now right click and run this now. Okay, of course. We have two outputs. Got multiple arguments per name. So this is fine. This is working. First two things are working.
Row number 18 Manorama. We pass
Yeah, yeah,
name
yeah.
and again name.
Yeah. So this should be, we can remove this actually. We can do one thing. This is not name actually. Our intention is assuming, yeah, we changed it the order, right? Yeah, that is also one more thing. Yeah, let's do one thing. We moved gender to the last position. So that's why, no problem. Now you can remove this, not a problem. To talk about this one. So, or else we can this we can delete it, no issues. So because the topic is default parameters. Now you can see here. What is it here? So this time we are not passing. If you, we have two test cases. If you observe here, in the first test case, I am passing Mary, and according to that, I changed my gender. It is female. That is fine. In the second test case, you can see I am not passing three parameters. I am just passing name, age, and then gender. I am not passing. You can see here. Also, one more thing. Here I am. Let me pass values in a proper order. Okay. So one is John. Second one is some 13, and third, let's leave it. Now I am not passing the third parameter. Even as per rule of functions or methods, number of parameters in color should match with number of parameters in the function. But here, if you see, I'm not passing three parameters. I'm just passing only two values. Still, we don't have an issue. Why? Because this parameter, third parameter, whatever we are declaring this as gender. I mean, sorry, a default parameter. So that if a parameter is a default parameter, it's not mandatory to pass a value for this parameter. If user doesn't pass value for this gender, by default, interpreter uses this default value. Now run this. If you run this, you can see here. We are fine here. And you can see the output. Mary 30 and female, John 30 and male. And by default, the third parameter in the second test case, the third parameter by default, interpreter chosen as this gender. Got it right, friends? So this is idea about defaults. And we use this lot of times in the development. Even defaults. All this, we use all this positional, default, keyed, variable length arguments, all this. It's not like we use few or we don't use few. We use positional, we use default, we use keyed, we use variable length. So this is about default, friends. Next one, variable length. I hope this is clear for all of you. What does default means? So while declaring a method or a function, we assign these parameters with some default, or we assign positional parameters with some values, because generally we call these as positional. And if we assign positional parameters with some values, and such parameters are default parameters. Okay, and in case user, and one advantage with this is it's optional to pass values through color. For default parameters, it's not mandatory to pass values through caller. If you want, you can skip it. Depends on your necessity and requirement. But this is a quick idea. Just assigning some value to positional parameters while declaring a function is nothing but default parameters. And if user is not passing any value to that default parameters, by default interpreter uses value that is assigned to that parameter. And we don't get any syntax errors here or any errors here. So this is the idea. Next, variable length arguments. This is one more useful scenario. We'll just cover here itself. So in Python, there are two types of variables. So one is using asterisk. Second one, so something like this, variable declaring something like some var asterisk. Second one, var asterisk asterisk. So two types of parameters are there. Let me just, so otherwise you can just name it as, but best is args of asterisk and args of asterisk asterisk. And we declare this with, where do we declare this? We declare these with functions or methods as parameters. So, and these parameters are variable length arguments. So we'll test one by one here because this is nothing. This is a simple to understand. So now let us take an example. You take some example like D of some F1 of you just say, I think sorry, I think we should put it before, not after. And this is not a pointer like in what shall I say, like in C, C++ or any other language. Okay, args colon. Now, what do? This is actually acts as a variable length argument. So we have two different variable length arguments in Python. So one is this one, friends. What is that? Star args and asterisk asterisk args or star args. These are fixed parameters or something. So which we follow same. But again, we don't have three stars in Python. Either a parameter with one star or a parameter with two stars. And such parameters we call them as variable length parameters. We'll see examples now. And this even these are used plenty of times in programming. Okay, and parameters. Okay. Now see here, friends. So I used asterisk arcs. What is this asterisk arcs? Both of these you are much aware of, friends. Even though you don't know what is that, but still you are completely aware of asterisk arcs and asterisk arcs. So let's see that what exactly is that. So I declared I'm testing asterisk arcs. Suppose what is that I do? I just print it. Print type of arcs. Because while declaring, we just need to apply asterisk. And after that, we can use it like any other variable. Now, also do one more thing. Print args. Okay, now we are just checking what would be the type of this parameter asterisk args, and this is actually a variable length argument. And by default, implicitly, what is this? This is a tuple. So simply speaking, by default, it is a tuple which accepts 0 parameters or 1 parameter, 2 parameters, or n parameters. Means length it can dynamically change. And this accepts any number of parameters starting with 0. Even if you don't pass anything, still it is okay. You got it right, friends. It's not like at least you should pass one. So now let's test it quickly. So you can just test it one by one by adding multiple test cases. Suppose test case 1. So what do you do? F1 of something like I'm not passing anything. If you don't pass anything, you get empty tuple. Right now, if you run this, see here, don't worry about that first example, this one. Check for output of this one. See, what is that you have here? Empty tuple. And you can see the type of this asterisk arcs. If you see type of asterisk arcs is tuple. We are very much familiar with the tuples, right? All data structures because we have spent enough time on data structures. Now this is implicitly a tuple. Now you can understand. Means now you see here, friends. F1 of I am passing one parameter to this argument. If I pass one, this one is copied to this argument. Still accepts that. You can see now. This time you can see tuple is showing one value. Again, what you can do, copy this again. To the same argument, I can pass two parameters. And you can, to the same argument, I can pass three parameters. You can see here, comma three. To the same parameter, I can pass three values. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. See, am just keep on increasing the size of this value list. Right? Size of values means here first time I am not passing anything, second time I am passing one, third time 2, 3, 4. Likewise, you can keep on, what is it, friends? We can keep on passing values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like this. Now right click and run this and see here. So you have all tuples. And maybe operation wise, if you want to do anything, we can do it, friends. Suppose if you want to do some implicit operations like doing iterating or adding or doing any product or any kind of mathematical operations, you can carry out inside that. But this is the idea about variable length arguments, asterisk arcs. By default, this is a tuple and you can pass any number of parameters to this asterisk arc, any number of values, simply saying. Okay, through color. So that is the idea, friends. Now, second scenario. Second scenario is also simple, friends. So simple. You can copy this. Okay. And you can add it here. Instead of F1, if you want, you can put F2. And here you put asterisk arcs, KW arcs. Generally, this is how people define asterisk, double asterisk parameters. So what is this again? Even you know this, friends. Of course, you don't know that you know. That is the only thing. But when we see the output, what is the type of that, then you understand. You are already clear with that. What is this KW args? By default, implicitly, this is a dictionary. It accepts key and value pairs. So we are familiar with dictionaries, right, friends? So what is this? This accepts, it accepts. If it is a dictionary, you know already, friends. What dictionary does? Dictionary accepts key value pairs. That is what KWRX is. So what is here? This one. This is a dict. Okay, do one thing. First, we'll go one by one. So I'm removing all this. Now see the output for the last one. Don't check for the previous examples output. Now what is this here by default? This asterisk or asterisk KWRX. This is how we define it. Even we use it in certain scenarios. This KWRX as well. Right? So this parameter even is used in your day-to-day development. So right click run this and you can see here. So now you can see just a minute. This is not tuple actually. You should not get it as tuple. Yeah, that is why you are getting as tuple because I am not calling F2. I'm calling it still F1. Now run this. Definitely you should see it as a dict. See here. See, this is a dict. If it is dict means if parameter is dict, what kind of values it accepts? It accepts key and value pairs. So first time I didn't pass anything. So this is empty dictionary. And even this can have zero or size can be 0 to n. Anything. It can be varying. That is why we call this as variable length. It can start from 0. Even if you don't pass anything, still it is fine. It is actually just a empty dictionary. Even same thing applies for tuple. Okay, friends. So this is the idea. Now Again, what you have to do, suppose I want to pass key and value pairs. How do I pass it? Something like A equal to 1, comma B equal to 2, something like this. Let's test it. Now you can see here, it got converted to dictionary, very just like that. But this is how you should pass through color. Again, this is color, right? Function color. We know we had discussed yesterday. And this is how we should call function color. And this is how we should pass key value pairs separated with equal, single equal assignment. Okay, similarly, if you want, you can pass a bigger size as well. So A equal to 2, B equal to, sorry, A1, B2, C3, something like this. You can again increase this key value pairs and run this now. Now you can see. Similarly, this size, you can keep on increasing the size. And this is what KWRX is. And these are very important, friends. And especially sometimes these are very useful for certification exams. And in development, definitely we use all this because I keep using them or I keep seeing in the already existing code. So that's why this is very useful to you, friends. These scenarios are very useful. And finally, we covered all different types of parameters, positional, default, keyed, variable length. I believe you should be very clear with all this. Default, by default, all parameters are positional, friends. And if you assign any value by default, if you set any value to positional, they becomes default parameters. If you don't want to follow order for positional, then make it as a keyed parameter. So at the in column, make sure you use the same name of this parameter in the color as well. So that order is not important. Else order is important for positional parameters. And variable length means these two are variable length arguments. We have two different types of variable length in Python. One is asterisk args. Second one asterisk asterisk KW. In a standard format, people say KW args. It's not like you should use args or KW args. These are not built-in parameters. Name can be anything, friends. But people follow the standard of saying args, and asterisk KW args, something they mention. And if you want, you can follow that or you can change that variable names. It's up to you. It's not like it should be asterisk args always. Or it's not like it should be asterisk KW args. Got it right? This is the idea about positional. Now let's jump to the next topic. Let us see what is the next topic here in this. Function is done. This is done. We have did these examples. So this is all we have covered, friends. These are all done. Lambda, before we move to lambda, there are some more scenarios, friends. We should talk about much more here. So what is it? Function types is over, parameter is fine. All different types are over. Asterisk is over, KWRX is over. And then, so again, we have to talk about, before I talk about these things, I need to talk about inner functions and then our nested functions. That is one thing. And then I have to talk about built-in functions. Okay. And then decorator. One more scenario is decorator. And then we have to talk about passing function as a parameter. There are so many scenarios. All this is applied in day-to-day task and recursion, a small one or two examples on recursion. And then we jump to lambda and we see more examples on lambda. And then we talk about higher order functions like filter, all that. Maybe we need one more session on functions. So let's go to the next topic. Next topic is inner functions. You already we have it, but it's okay. Just for explanation purpose, I'll take one quick example. And I'll also show you a exact real-time usage of inner functions. Okay. So already might be that is there. Let me just do one thing. Inner function demo. Okay. Now let's close all this. I didn't share this code base, right? Just a minute, friends. Let me share this with you. Maybe whenever it's needed, we try to have sessions on Saturday sprints because we have more content, and that's how it is. We have, I think Shiva sir, I mean, designed that. So we added many scenarios that helps you to in the Python development, not just only data engineering. Even this is helpful for many other type things actually. Okay, next, let's get into the next topic. What is it, friends? Inner functions demo.
We are not able to reach your.
Okay, then I didn't send it. Okay, that's what I. Thank you. Probably sometimes what happens is I forget submitting that. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, now you should get it right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you can see there now. Yeah, thank you. So now you hear, see here, friends. Inner functions is something really useful, but the reality is because I keep working on even at sometimes at system level because automations in sense we take care of so much of database management, not querying all that space management. Maybe if you ask me, do you write a lot of queries? Means we generally write, we don't write queries at all. That's not our requirement. Then if you ask me what you do means, we are completely responsible for infra management. So I'll just show you some scenarios how we really apply inner functions in our tooling. Okay. Now, first, let's understand what is inner function. It's simple. Already we have idea about function, types of parameters, all that. Inner function means function within a function, simply speaking. Function within a function. And when at what situations we need this, I'll take up a real scenario that helps you. So first thing, this is one function, something like outer. Okay, colon. This is how the syntax is. So you have an outer function. Again, inside that inner, you have inner function. Simple. Same function what we discussed, we just keep inside another function. And function within a function or inner functions, we can call with any of these one of these names. So this is inner, friends. Okay. Now you can see the whatever this function at line 3. This is inner function. Even this can have parameters as well. It's not like it should be like this. Okay, suppose I pass 10 to this or some x. Just put x per outer or x comma y. Let it be like this. Then I can pass same parameters I can pass to this as well. Then what I can do, I can simply say return x plus y, something like this. Okay. Similarly, what I can do, I can define one more. Maybe you can do one thing. Inner one, I put it as inner one. You can say add or sub or something, but I'm just showing you like this. Now, what is that? This inner function can be a default or it can actually have the parameters. So we can share parameters of outer to inner, or it can have its own parameters apart from what we have for outer. There are different things we can follow for inner functions. But this time I am delegating whatever parameters declared with outer function. Same parameters we are delegating. Delegating means passing to the inner functions. So this is fine. Now what is that? Here I am calling inner, and to this inner I am passing x comma y. Okay. So now inner one, that's the reason. Yeah. Maybe if you want, what you can do, yeah, this should be fine. So two things. So this is one thing. Then what you can do, maybe you can directly print it because it is returning something, right? There are two things you can do here. Directly print it, or otherwise assign to some variable and you can print that. That's your choice. And finally here, just call outer. Oh, sorry. Just call outer, run this now. Now what happens? This is the execution flow. Right click, debug this. This is one scenario. Now what is it here? Still it's, yeah, now you can see there. Now say step in, you step in, out. Yeah, why error? Because I need to pass two parameters. You can see here. I'm not passing anything, so that's why the error is two only. Pass two parameters. Now what you do? Right click, run this. Now you can see here. Now what is happening here? Now debug this. Let me quickly debug it. Now you started here, and this is a function call, right? Or a method call. Either function or method call, anything is almost same friends. We don't have big difference there. Now step into. Then you got it to the outer, and then you can see from outer you go to the caller first. Without calling, you don't get directly execute inner. Then again step over. See, from outer it has again gone to calling this inner, and again step over. It gets into the inner function, and finally that value is returned back. So that is printed again. So step over, you can see the output here. Already we are passing it directly to the print, right? That's what. And this is one scenario. Is this clear? So this is how we can again group code into inner functions. So this is more like again simple word for this is we can break down into again some, or you can modularize this in more meaningful approach by using inner functions. Functions itself is are useful for implementing modularization, and inner functions again are very much useful to modularize it in more meaningful way. And now you got this idea, right? This is outer, this is inner. This inner function can share values of outer function, not directly, but by through caller. So this is how it is. Suppose let us take, suppose we want to do some operation, something like operations. Okay. And the inside these operations, so I can say some or addition add. Okay. Similarly, I can break down this into much more meaningful this thing here. See, I am again you can see this now in this operations function. What we are doing here, we are trying to add a few more inner functions according to our logic. For addition, what is that I am doing? Even you can write all this in one line. It's not like you should put it in two lines. And this makes more, see how this code looks more beautiful here. This is something like you can say diff or sub anything, I should be fine. So diff in sense, you can just simply say x minus y. See, I just wrote in single lines. Even this is allowed. We don't have a big problem. And third thing, what you can do, def. I'm just adding one more. Later on, it's you can add how many ever you want, friends. See here now. Third thing, you can add some sub. Diff is over. You can add prod or multiplication. Anything should be fine. And x into y. And you can increase the size of parameters here. It's not like you should have two for each of this. For now, I am taking two. It's up to you, friends. Now, what is that you can do? All these are returning values, right? So in these kind of scenarios, in real usage, what we do is again we return back the results from inner function to somewhere to the outer level. But you can see here, this is how we create inner functions. The idea of function itself is modularization. And when you use inner functions, we are again increasing that level of modularization. Now, if you see here, what is that? We are adding much more meaningful modularization to already existing modularization. This acts as a sub-modularization again. And now you can see this makes more sense, right? See, you are doing some, maybe if you want, you can say arith otherwise operations. Now, under that, again, this add, this diff, again, we made it as some in, what did we do? We made them as inner functions so that we can modularize further. So now what is that? Now once this is done, generally in real development, we don't print. Generally, we don't that printing then and there itself. The idea is we want to return all these results. So what is that we should simply say return add of some x comma y comma again add of what you can do, or else the best thing is returning them as a key value pair. So you can say something like add colon. So you might miss on certain things, right? Do one thing, put like this, friends. Add colon this one. Okay. Let me give you more better scenario. This is much more interesting. See here. This is allowed. You don't have any issue. Nobody is going to say anything here. Second one. See how beautiful this is. Diff. You can add a diff colon. So some diff of x comma y. This is how we apply or we return something from inner functions in your development. And third thing, you can return if you have multiple, if you are returning values from multiple inner functions. This is how generally we return when you are working in a development. If it is one value, you don't need this dictionary scenario. You can directly return that particular inner function itself. So finally, last is what is it, friends? You have prod. You can set it to that. What is it, friends? Product, and then you can simply say some prod of x comma y. This is enough, and finally you can close the dictionary here. Return this scenario. So this is over. So we are done here, friends. See how this is how beautiful scenario this is. And we created an outer function. Inside that, we created inner functions by breaking down our logic into much more meaningful modularization. And finally, all that results, whatever we are getting in this through inner functions, we are returning them, accumulating into or gathering it into a dictionary. Now, finally, you return this, what you have to do. Now, when you call outer function, definitely this outer function is having something returning return value from this function. So what do you do when any function return a value? We have to assign it to some variable. Okay, some result equal to this scenario we have already discussed. So copy this method name. We changed it method name. Just change that. Now if you see here, so whenever a function is returning value, make sure this is we had clearly discussed even in the previous session. When a function is returning value, make sure you assign that function color to some variable so that the result that is returned is assigned to this variable. Now finally you can print this result. Print what you can say result. Right click, run this. You can see the output here. And if you want to again separate this, if you want to extract it, you can, there are different ways, iterate it or do whatever approach you want to, friends. If you want pair by pair, then iterate it, friends. But this is how we get all results back to the color, and then we use this result, whatever we got here in this operation, arithmetic operations, in the subsequent scenarios. Here we are having just one scenario, but in development, this result we just don't print it, but we do something on this, like that, friends. You got it right. So this is the overall idea of what is it, friends? What is inner function? How to add modularization to the code by adding more inner functions. So and how can we return all the results that we get from multiple inner functions, right? And how we can extract that result here and how we can use it in the subsequent operations. So this is the idea, friends. So this is about inner functions. We are done with that. What is an inner function? Function in a function, you can see here. And this is almost near to the real time scenario. I even had one example which will quickly show you that as well. So now what do we do? Is this clear for all of you, friends? Do you understand this? Interesting, right? let's share this with you. I think you received this time. Okay. Now, next after that is one more real scenario. What I do in my work, day-to-day work, how we are one tool where we apply inner functions is this one, I believe. You can see here. Yes. This covers a lot of things, friends. I just tweaked the values because I am not showing you my project values, and there are few changes. See, this is one example. Already, I believe you got a clear idea about inner functions, right? And this is inner. I just developed it last night. It's not like okay, I bought it from somewhere, friends. Just to save some time, I had already one ready-made example, but you can understand this like this. Now you see, this is our real scenario, and almost the code, whatever we are doing, the way we implement code is how this is how we build our system. So generally we have a run method generally. From run, actually we pass some that environment specific because we manage a lot of databases, almost 23 databases we manage as a DevOps engineer. So you can see there are multiple things covered in this topic, and this one simple example have a lot of this thing whatever we have discussed it so far. It covers so many previous things we had discussed. Now you can see by default we set something like with default value. See here, friends, and we set by default to dev or prod or something. If user is not passing, then it try to run on that environment. Now what is that we did here? So you can see here we created a method get result which here I am directly assigning values. But in our code, you can see I have two functions here, one outer function and one inner function. What I am doing in the outer function, simply what I am doing here is you can see here. I'm getting that database specific value. So you can see here DB name means suppose when I am calling run, I'm calling run, right? If I want, I can pass prod here. We'll go one by one. First, let me explain this code. What is this? In this run, what is that? We are just having a parameter, that environment specific parameter, which is default here, which is set to dev. We will just to test one or two or three test cases so that you get that idea. And in this run, this is more like acts as a driver program for us. In this driver program, we keep calling multiple methods and then doing different operations in this driver program. So now what is here? I have two methods here. Honestly, we have one method, but when you look into that, deeper into that, we have two. One is outer, the other one is inner. But here, what I am doing to my convenience, I broke down this into the two, like inner function and the outer function. In the outer function, what did I do? Usually, we get these values by hitting from where we get these values, friends. We fetch these values from the database, something like writing some query or doing some kind of this thing, friends. Generally we have our framework specific methods. Actually, we don't write queries, friends, because this we are whatever the database we are managing is NoSQL lightweight databases. So more than querying, there will be methods, and through that methods, what we do is we call a method and then try to hit that database. Okay, and we apply certain that database walking from one folder to another folder. So what do? We fetch that information through generally these details we get through querying. That is one scenario. If it is a regular database. Second one is through applying some that API specific methods. So finally, if you look at this code, this is simple. I created a dictionary, empty this by I created a dummy dictionary, and then after that I am setting values to this to that dictionary. You can see this is how dictionaries are really useful. And what is that I am adding here? Whatever that generic values are there, the database name, project name, size, all that, I try to gather that and add it to the dictionary. And these values I fetch from the, I directly get from the DB itself by applying some API methods. Here I'm just hard coding it. But in reality, what is it, friends? we fetch these values either through querying or through, what is it friends, applying API methods. For us, we apply some framework specific APIs. Okay, so then these are all generic values. So I'm adding them in the outer function. That we generally have dictionaries like this. And when you read some certain key value, some data from databases, we try to create them or assign them to dictionaries. You can see here. After that, you can see I created one inner function. See this. Again, there is much more specific information on that database. What is that? That database quota, disk quota, both are different. One is for database, the other one is overall disk quota. Someone at hardware level, you understand, but you don't need to get that. We don't need to get into that now. And then active DB, history, and then total. There are certain things. Something more specific, we put it into inner function. Something which are common, we put it into outer function. I'm giving you a real scenario, how we apply inner functions. And then all the details, whatever we have here, we try to return it. Something, just now we had a scenario here, see here. So we applied it. In a similar way, we use this here, friends. And we return all those values, and you can see we are totally returning that function as a value, not just any parameter or something. So all that whatever we have updated in the inner function, we return it as a value. Now what is that we are doing? When you say get result, it returns that inner function, and whatever values that is written from inner function is assigned to some variable. You got it right, friends? So what is that you should do when you assign it? There are two things. What is that? This is just returning function as a value, that name of function. In this example, if you see what we are doing here, you can see here. We are calling function, and you can see here, and then gathering that results and then returning. In this scenario, it is slightly different. We are directly returning function so that when you return this, when you call this method, the return type of this outer function is this inner function. You can see. Now, when you return inner function as return type, again on top of that, you should make a function call. Otherwise, you don't. You just get that object of that value as object. Suppose you see here. I'll run this now. See, this code is clear, right? I hope when you understand this, there is nothing. Just declaring a outer and inner. Where in the outer we are just defining all that common parameters. In the inner, more specific parameters we define, and then we return that back. And here we are returning a function as parameter. Now what do you do right now? Now to this get result, we are passing this. That returns this one. Now what shall we do now? Do one thing. So just print this DB function. Suppose if you see, we are returning outer function, right? Print this DB function. Let's run it. And this whatever these variables which are common variables that we declared here are already in the dictionary. Here this function is returning by default. We should the value we assign here will be values from inner function. Then maybe you ask me, Manoram, we are seeing some values in the outer function. How do we fetch? How do we extract them? We are already assigning them to this global dictionary. So once we assign to the global dictionary, you can print it or call it wherever you want it, friends. And this is how this driver program is. You can see. Now first I call get result by passing that DB name. Generally this run environment I have to pass here. Okay. So usually in real time, what do? We pass that database name, and it will run that. And on that, it will try to do some operation. Okay. And then fetch the details of that database, whatever it is. If it is dev or prod or UAT or QA or whatever it is. We have 23 databases like that. Okay. So now run this and see here. If you here at this level, if you don't suppose if you are not calling DB function, this parameter as a function again, see how it would be. Now right click, run this. See here. You got what is it here, friends? So somewhere I'll just set it because this error is because I can comment this for a while. Now right click, run this. See. Now what is happening here? See here. If I don't again apply a function call on this parameter, you can see that is returned as object. Why? There is a difference, slight difference between this example and this example. In this example, we are actually doing a method call and passing values and assigning that result, whatever that is written to this key. That's why we can see value. We are not returning this function as a value. We are collecting results from all the inner functions and we are returning. And here we are directly returning function. When you return a function as a value, then we should get that value, right? And then on top of that, what is that you should do? You should apply again a method call on this resultant variable. Why I should apply a method call? Because this is not a value with, this is not a parameter or a variable with values. This is a variable which has a function as a value or function object. And when you have object inside this variable, function object in this variable, we have to apply a method call on that function object. Now this works for us. See here now. Finally, we are printing all values. We have that whatever we are passing this run environment. And second thing, we are also passing that printing this all database details which we captured as common values. Second, you can see here. And finally, third one, the result from the inner function. You can see that is one. Now, if you run it, see here, you get all that. Environment is dev and database details, database name, project name, and then size, all that we get. And then computed values is nothing but something implicit. That data quota, database quota, and then this quota, ActiveDB, all that. And this is how we use inner functions in the development, especially in my day-to-day work. This is one example. Likewise, we use inner functions wherever we need it and wherever we need more deeper modularization, friends. So this is a live scenario, and you definitely you can see this is much more organized here. This all that code, everything. Got it? This is one thing. Second thing, suppose you pass here some prod. Now earlier we are test case one, we have verified for dev environment. Similarly, we can test for multiple environments. We can test for prod or we can test for QAT, all that. Maybe we can add Q. What you can do one thing. You can apply multiple runs here. You can call driver program and change your parameter. If you don't pass anything, it provides details for dev environment. Suppose you are changing your test cases. So you change you are passing for prod and similarly UAT and similarly for QA, you want to test for multiple environments. This is how you can test it, friends. Okay. Now right click and run this now. You can see here. You get details for all environments. You have prod, you have UAT, you have QA, all this here. So finally, the point is the how we can use inner functions really in development. This is the scenario we are seeing here. And definitely this is an example where which helps us to recap multiple things which we have already discussed as well. So this is finally idea about this one, friends. Hope you got idea. Finally, you can just comment this print because this is not needed. Just to show you that this is a function object. When you return a function as parameter, then it don't have that values of function directly. Again, on top of that function object, you have to apply a call. Then only this inner function is called, and then the values from inner function is returned to us, and that we are assigning to the result variable. Got it, friends? So even if you run again, we get the same thing, but little more polished output because we removed that printing function object here. We have output for prod, UAT, and QA. See, this is how we generate reports. This is at a small level. So we add much more. At least I have some 1,000 lines in that tool which I created. So now let's copy this and then share it with you. So code snippet. Useful, friends. Interesting, right? So next after this is we have to talk about another scenario. What is it, friends? Inner functions is done. Definitely, we have very good use case here, and this helps really understand what exactly inner functions, how we really use this. Because generally, in general discussions, people just talk about what is outer, what is inner, but the exact use sometimes we miss on that. So that's why not to miss on that. So I just curated few examples here so that it might be giving you a bigger picture for all of us. You got it right, friends. Apart from that, next thing is we can try recursion, friends. And then tomorrow in sense on Monday, we jump to lambdas and also after that decorators. Okay. And after that higher order functions. All these are very useful things for you, friends. That map function, filter function, all that we discuss. So, and also I have one more, I have, you added few more scenarios like parsing. Before we talk about the higher order functions, I would like to cover parsing function as a parameter. You can see something like this. We tried one example just now is inner functions and then how we can, what purpose of that, all that. Again, inner functions, how we can pass that function as parameter. You can see here, so you can see this. Before we go and discuss this higher order functions, we cover one more scenario, how we can pass functions as parameters and how we can apply again different things what we learned from previous, what we have from previous learnings, that list comprehensions, all that. So this is again recapping mix of what we learned earlier and then something which we want to learn now, the latest learnings. That's how we design this pen so that it helps you, it gives you more bigger idea about things and how we can apply all that. Okay. So we'll stop here, friends. I hope today is Saturday. Happy, maybe for you, it should be Friday evening. Yeah, should be. So shall